The cameras were live. A 9-year-old girl named Emily walked onto the stage and began to sing. Simon Cowell heard the first line and froze completely, because those words were known by only one person, and that person died 3 years ago. America's Got Talent. The Dolby Theater in Los Angeles. Another Tuesday night audition. Another packed audience. Another parade of hopefuls stepping onto that stage with dreams bigger than their fear. Simon Cowell sat at the judge's desk in his usual position. Arms crossed. That familiar expression of measured skepticism on his face. He'd seen thousands of auditions over the years. Singers, dancers, magicians, comedians. Most were forgettable. Some were terrible. A rare few were extraordinary. But none of them had ever done what Emily Carter was about to do. She walked onto the stage slowly, her small frame almost swallowed by the massive space. 9 years old. Shoulder-length brown hair. A simple white dress that looked like it had been carefully chosen for this moment. She held a microphone in both hands, gripping it tightly like it might float away if she let go. Host Terry Crews greeted her with his trademark enthusiasm. "Welcome to America's Got Talent! What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emily Carter," she said quietly, her voice barely carrying through the theater. "And how old are you, Emily?" 9. 9 years old! Wow! And what are you going to do for us today?" Emily looked down at the microphone, then back up at Terry. "I'm going to sing a song. For someone who can't be here." Terry's expression softened. "That's beautiful. Who are you singing for?" "My aunt," Emily said. "She died 3 years ago. But she made me promise something before she left. And tonight I'm keeping that promise." The audience made that collective "ah" sound. Simon shifted slightly in his chair, uncrossing his arms. Sob stories were common on these shows. Genuine or manufactured, they all followed similar patterns. He'd learned to listen politely and judge the performance, not the backstory. "Well, we're honored you chose our stage," Terry said gently. "Whenever you're ready." Emily nodded. She closed her eyes. The music track began, a simple piano melody, soft and melancholic. And then she sang. "In the quiet of the morning, when the world is still asleep." Simon's entire body went rigid. "I hear whispers of tomorrow and promises I keep." His hands moved to grip the edge of the desk. "Though you're gone, I carry forward what you trusted me to say." His mouth opened slightly. His eyes widened. "The words you made me memorize on your very last day." Cameras were live when the girl on stage held up a photograph, and Simon Cowell had to stand up from the judge's desk because he recognized what song she was singing and knew those lyrics shouldn't exist. The other judges noticed immediately. Howie Mandel leaned over. "Simon? You okay?" Simon didn't respond. He was staring at Emily with an expression no one in that theater had ever seen on his face before. Complete and utter shock mixed with something that looked like pain. Emily continued singing, eyes still closed, unaware of the reaction she was causing. "You said the world would try to break me, said the voices would be loud. But you gave me words of armor to stand tall and make you proud." Simon stood up. Not the casual standing he sometimes did during performances. This was abrupt, involuntary, like his body had moved without permission from his brain. Sofia Vergara reached out to touch his arm. "Simon, what's wrong?" "That song," Simon said, his voice hoarse, barely audible. "How does she know that song?" "What do you mean?" Heidi asked, concerned. "Stop," Simon said, louder now. "Stop the music. Stop everything." The control room went into chaos. "Director, what's happening? Did we lose audio? Why is Simon?" "I said stop." Simon's voice cut through the theater like a knife. The music cut off. Emily's eyes snapped open, confused and frightened. The audience went completely silent. 300 people frozen, unsure what they were witnessing. Simon stepped out from behind the judge's desk. He walked toward the stage, his movements slow and deliberate, like he was approaching something sacred or dangerous. He couldn't tell which. "Emily," he said, his voice tight, controlled with visible effort. "Where did you learn that song?" Emily looked terrified. My aunt taught it to me. Before she died." "What was your aunt's name?" "Catherine." "Catherine Morrison?" The name hit Simon like a physical blow. He stopped walking, standing in the space between the judge's desk and the stage, completely exposed under the lights. His jaw clenched. His hands balled into fists at his sides. Simon stopped the show. No one knew what was happening. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 7 years ago. Simon Cowell wasn't always the hardened television personality the world knows today. In 2017, he had a younger sister. Not by blood, Catherine was his stepsister from his father's second marriage, 16 years younger than Simon. But he'd helped raise her after their father died. He'd been more than a brother. He'd been a guardian, a mentor, a father figure. Catherine was brilliant. Musical. Kind. She wanted to be a songwriter but was terrified of performing. She wrote hundreds of songs, beautiful, heartbreaking, honest songs, but could never bring herself to share them with the world. "What if they hate it?" she asked Simon during their weekly phone calls. "What if I put my heart out there and everyone tears it apart?" "Then you'll survive it," Simon would tell her. "Because the alternative, never sharing what you've created, is worse than any criticism." But Catherine could never quite believe him. The songs stayed in notebooks. Recorded on her phone. Shared with no one except Simon and her closest family. In 2019, Catherine was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She was 34 years old. Simon dropped everything. He put his shows on temporary hold, delegated his production work, and moved into the guest room of Catherine's small apartment in London to help care for her. They had 6 months. 6 months of hospital visits and medication schedules and increasingly difficult conversations about what came next. One afternoon in her final week, Catherine was sitting in her living room, too weak to do much except rest. Simon sat beside her, holding her hand, watching her breathe, each breath a little harder than the last. "I need you to promise me something," Catherine said suddenly, her voice thin but determined. "Anything," Simon said. "My songs. The ones I never shared. I want you to find someone to perform them. Someone young. Someone who still believes music can change things." Simon's throat tightened. "Catherine. Promise me, Simon. Don't let them die with me. They were meant to be heard. I promise." Catherine smiled weakly. "There's one in particular. I wrote it last month. It's called Promises I Keep. It's about you, actually. About how you taught me to be brave even though I never quite managed it. I want that one performed first. On your show. On AGT. I'll find someone," Simon said, his voice breaking. "I'll find the perfect person. Make sure they understand what it means," Catherine whispered. "Make sure they know it's not just a song. It's a promise. From me to you. That even after I'm gone, the things you taught me will keep living." 4 days later, Catherine died in that same living room, with Simon holding her hand. Simon kept his promise. He searched for 2 years. He listened to hundreds of singers. Young, old, professionals, amateurs. No one felt right. The songs sat in a folder on his computer, Catherine's demo recording, her voice fragile and beautiful, singing lyrics that now felt like a message from beyond the grave. He'd never found the right person to perform it. Until tonight. When a 9-year-old girl walked onto his stage and started singing Catherine's song. The song no one should know. The song that had never been published, never been shared, never existed anywhere except in Simon's private files and Catherine's notebooks. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this performance is still ahead. Simon stood in the middle of the theater, the lights harsh and unforgiving on his face. Emily was still on stage, still holding her microphone, looking terrified. How do you know this song? Simon asked again, his voice steadier now but carrying an edge of desperation. Emily, this is very important. How do you know promises I keep? Emily's eyes filled with tears. My Aunt Catherine taught it to me. She said it was a secret. That I wasn't supposed to tell anyone about it until the right time. She made me practice it every day for months before she got too sick. She said one day I'd know when to sing it, and when that day came, I had to be brave. Simon's hands were shaking. Catherine Morrison was your aunt? Emily nodded. She was my mom's younger sister. She lived with us for the last few months before she died. She spent a lot of time with me. Teaching me songs. Telling me stories. Did she tell you who the song was about? She said it was about someone who taught her to be strong. Someone who loved her even when she was scared. She said. Emily's voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. She said if I ever got the chance to sing it on America's Got Talent, I should take it. Because that's where the person who needed to hear it would be. The audience was completely silent. You could hear people crying in the darkness. The other judges had stopped trying to understand and had simply surrendered to witnessing whatever this moment was. Simon's composure finally broke. Tears ran down his face. Simon Cowell, who never cried on camera, who maintained iron control through every performance, every emotional story, every heartbreaking audition, was crying openly on live television. He climbed onto the stage. Protocol shattered. Rules abandoned. He walked up to Emily, who looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. I'm the person, Simon said quietly, kneeling down so he was eye level with her. I'm the person Catherine wrote that song about. I'm her brother. And she made you promise to sing it for me. Emily's face transformed, fear replaced by understanding, then by something like joy mixed with grief. She said you'd know? She said when you heard it, you'd remember what you promised her. I do remember. Simon whispered. And I've been trying to keep that promise for 3 years. I'd been looking for someone to perform her songs. But I could never find the right person. He smiled through his tears. She found you for me. She taught you. She made sure this song would reach me exactly when I needed to hear it. Emily threw her arms around Simon's neck. This tiny 9-year-old girl hugging one of the toughest judges in television, while he cried into her shoulder, while 300 people watched, while cameras broadcast this moment of raw grief and love and impossible connection to millions. Backstage, producers were begging him to continue, but he didn't. The show went to an unscheduled break. Simon stayed on stage with Emily for 10 minutes while producers scrambled, and the audience sat in reverent silence. He asked her about Catherine. About the time they'd spent together. About the other songs she'd learned. She taught me 7 songs total, Emily said. This one was supposed to be first. She said the others could wait until you were ready. Simon looked at her tear-stained face, at this child carrying his dead sister's legacy, and made a decision. He stood up. Walked to the judge's desk. And without a word to anyone, slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded across the stage. The audience erupted, not in celebration, but in that specific kind of applause that's half joy and half catharsis, the sound of 300 people releasing emotion they didn't know they were holding. But what happened next, no one in the theater, or watching at home, could ever forget. When the confetti settled, Simon returned to the stage. He gestured for a stagehand to bring him a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice still rough with emotion. I need to tell you something. That song Emily just sang was written by my sister Catherine before she died. She made Emily promise to perform it for me. And tonight that promise was kept. He looked at Emily. Will you finish the song? The way Catherine taught you? Emily nodded, wiping her tears. The music began again. Emily sang the complete version. Every word Catherine had written about courage, about love, about promises that outlived death. Simon stood beside her on stage, hand on her shoulder, tears streaming down his face as he heard his sister's words sung by the child she'd chosen as her messenger. When the final note ended, the theater erupted. Standing ovation. Every judge on their feet. Simon pulled Emily into another embrace. Share and subscribe, so this story will never be forgotten. After the show, Simon gave Emily something he'd been carrying for 3 years, Catherine's original songbook. "These are yours now," he said. "She chose you to share them. I was just looking in the wrong places." Emily went on to perform all 7 songs Catherine had taught her throughout the season. She didn't win the competition. She didn't need to. And in Simon's office today, framed beside his awards, sits a photo of Catherine and 9-year-old Emily, taken weeks before Catherine died. Proof that she'd planned this moment years in advance. A promise kept. A song delivered. A sister's love reaching across death to remind her brother, keep going.